What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors goes head-to-head with a beloved morning show host in front of millions of viewers? What starts as a routine interview about a new film quickly spirals into something nobody saw coming. Denzel Washington, known for his composed demeanor and thoughtful responses, finds himself in a verbal battle that leaves the studio audience stunned and producers scrambling. This is the story of how a simple question about method acting turned into one of the most explosive moments in morning television history. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me what you think really happened here. Now let's get into it. The Good Morning America studio buzzed with its usual early morning energy. Lights glowed, cameras rolled, and the atmosphere felt polished and predictable. Denzel Washington sat across from host Michael Strahan, calm and confident, there to promote his latest directorial project, a gritty drama set in the urban landscape of the 1980s. At first, everything unfolded exactly as expected. Denzel spoke thoughtfully about storytelling, about responsibility, and about the challenge of balancing the roles of director and actor. His tone was measured, reflective, and professional. Michael leaned forward, smiling, guiding the conversation smoothly. He asked about preparation, about intensity, about how Denzel steps into emotionally demanding roles. Denzel explained that he doesn't simply arrive on set and improvise. He lives with his characters, studies their world, observes people, and absorbs the emotional reality long before filming begins. It was the kind of answer audiences expect from a veteran actor, insightful, disciplined, and deeply personal. Then the tone shifted. Michael followed up with what sounded like a broader industry question, referencing criticism of method, acting, and concerns about actors crossing lines or appropriating experiences that aren't their own. The studio felt different almost instantly. Denzel paused, his jaw tightening just slightly. The silence lingered longer than a typical TV beat. When he asked Michael to repeat the question, the air grew heavy. As Michael clarified, Denzel's expression hardened. What had been a friendly exchange began to feel confrontational. Denzel interpreted the question not as abstract, but as personal, an implication that his process, his right to embody certain stories, was being challenged. The audience fell quiet. Smiles faded. Cameras continued to roll as the conversation veered off its safe promotional path and into something raw and unpredictable. What followed would transform a routine morning interview into a moment people would debate long after the broadcast ended. Denzel's response came sharply, cutting through the polite television tone. He questioned whether Michael was suggesting that he, a black man raised in Mount Vernon, New York, lacked the authenticity to portray characters from similar backgrounds. Michael immediately raised his hands, trying to diffuse the tension. He insisted that wasn't his intention, explaining that he meant to reference method acting as a general practice, not Denzel's identity or right to tell certain stories. But the damage was already done. Denzel pushed back, explaining that implication matters as much as intent. From his perspective, the question landed differently because of who he was and the context in which it was asked. The studio audience remained silent, sensing the gravity of the exchange. Michael's polished smile disappeared, replaced by visible discomfort as he tried to steer the conversation back toward safer ground. Denzel wasn't ready to let it go. He pointed out what he saw as a double standard in Hollywood. He referenced celebrated white actors who were praised for extreme dedication, gaining weight, changing accents, living as their characters, without ever being accused of appropriation. Yet when he spoke about researching and inhabiting roles connected to his own community, the conversation suddenly shifted to concerns about crossing lines. His voice remained controlled, but the frustration beneath it was unmistakable. Michael attempted to explain that he wasn't singling Denzel out, but the explanation only seemed to deepen the divide. Denzel framed the moment as part of a larger pattern, one where black actors are routinely questioned in ways others are not. The interview had now fully transformed into a debate about bias, perception, and accountability. Producers off-camera exchanged nervous glances, likely debating whether to cut to commercial, but the cameras stayed locked on the two men. Michael tried to regain control, suggesting a step back, but Denzel challenged him to explain how the question wasn't personal when it was asked directly about his work. Each attempt to soften the moment only reinforced Denzel's point in his own mind that the question revealed assumptions Michael hadn't examined. What made the exchange especially tense was Denzel's insistence on staying with the discomfort. He refused to move on, arguing that these conversations are often avoided the moment they become inconvenient. The studio, once buzzing with morning show energy, now felt frozen. Viewers at home weren't watching a film promotion anymore. They were witnessing a live, unscripted confrontation about race, representation, and who gets questioned and who doesn't. In the entertainment industry, the conversation escalated further when Michael suggested that it didn't have to be about race. Those words landed heavily. Denzel repeated them slowly, almost incredulously, before responding that everything in the industry and in the country is shaped by race, whether people choose to acknowledge it or not. To him, the ability to say it doesn't have to be about race was itself a position of comfort and privilege. Michael insisted he was trying to keep the interview professional, but Denzel countered that professionalism also means examining unconscious assumptions. He argued that the question wasn't neutral, even if it was asked casually. It reflected a normalized tendency to scrutinize Black excellence, to question credibility where none is questioned for others. The audience remained silent, the tension so thick it felt almost physical. Michael tried a different approach, expressing respect for Denzel's career and suggesting they move on to the film. Denzel refused. He made it clear that he believed conversations like this are exactly what need to happen publicly, not brushed aside for comfort. Attempting to pivot away only reinforced his belief that accountability was being avoided. As the exchange continued, Michael admitted he couldn't recall asking similar questions of white actors. Denzel seized on that admission, using it to underline his point. This wasn't about intention, he said, but about patterns. When challenged, Michael became visibly frustrated, saying he felt he couldn't win the conversation. Denzel immediately pushed back, stating this wasn't about winning or losing, but about understanding impact. The moment grew even more volatile when Michael described Denzel as being overly sensitive. The reaction was instant. Denzel fell silent for a beat, then calmly explained how that phrase has historically been used to dismiss legitimate concerns raised by Black people. The studio seemed to collectively hold its breath. Michael appeared distressed, saying the interview had gotten out of hand and that he was trying to salvage it. Denzel responded that it unraveled the moment responsibility was avoided. What unfolded was no longer just disagreement. It was a collision of perspectives, with neither side willing to retreat. Millions of viewers watched as a morning show transformed into a raw, uncomfortable reckoning played out in real time. As producers signaled frantically from off-camera, Michael attempted to wrap things up, thanking Denzel for coming on the show. The gesture felt abrupt and forced. Denzel shut it down immediately, calling out the sudden shift to polite closure after such a charged exchange. To him, pretending it had been a normal interview diminished the seriousness of what had just occurred. He stood from his chair, the movement deliberate and commanding. For a moment, it seemed like he might simply walk away, but instead, he turned directly toward the camera, speaking not just to Michael but to the audience at home. Denzel explained why he refused to smooth things over. This, he said, is what it looks like when Black people refuse to quietly absorb dismissive treatment. This is what it looks like to demand equal respect rather than comfort. He challenged viewers who felt uncomfortable to ask themselves why. His tone wasn't explosive, it was resolute. Years of experience, frustration, and clarity were packed into his words. Then he turned back to Michael, stating plainly that the conversation didn't have to go this way. It went this way because defensiveness replaced listening, and dismissal replaced reflection. With that, Denzel walked off the set. The cameras lingered on Michael, now sitting alone at the table. The studio audience remained silent, unsure how to react. What had begun as a routine promotional interview ended as one of the most talked about confrontations in morning television. In the aftermath, viewers were left divided. Some praised Denzel for speaking truth to power and refusing to let subtle bias slide. Others felt the situation escalated too far for a morning show setting. Regardless of where people landed, one thing was undeniable. The moment struck a nerve. It exposed how quickly conversations about craft can turn into conversations about race, and how uncomfortable those discussions become when they can't be controlled or edited. Long after the broadcast ended, clips circulated online. Debates erupted in comment sections, and the question lingered, was Denzel justified? Or did the moment go too far? Now it's your turn to decide. What do you think really happened in that studio?